Welcome in, everyone. We're diving into the world of Cheon Hyangmi today.
Oh, I'm excited for this one.
Me too. Her poetry collection, Alkerningwa, which translates to You Need Guts to Fly, by the way.
Catchy title.
It is, and I think it really sets the tone for what we're going to explore.
Definitely. So, for our listeners, this might be their first time encountering modern Korean poetry.
Yeah, first foray for some, so think of it like a tasting menu, not a whole course.
I like that. A taste to get you hooked.
Exactly. Now, I'm curious, when you hear poetry from another culture, what piques your interest?
Hmm. For me, it's that window into a different worldview. Like how does Chan Hyangmi, being Korean, how does that shape how she sees things?
Ooh, the metaphors, the emotions she chooses.
Yeah, all of that. What's universal enough to write about? What's specific to her experience?
I love that perspective. For me, it's more about like the everyday stuff, but transformed through language.
Especially in a culture you're not familiar with, right?
Totally. It just adds this extra layer of discovery.
We'll get ready to discover. Because John Hyangmi, she's a pretty fresh voice. Debuted in 2007.
Oh, so relatively recent.
Yeah, but already making waves, winning awards, grants, the whole shebang.
Impressive. And you mentioned she's from Busan.
Busan, yep.
Oh,
Coastal city, super vibrant. And that really comes through in her poetry.
I bet. Before we jump in, you said she also has a previous book, Dying in the Sea Light.
That's right. And as we go through, You Need Guts to Fly, I think you'll see how some of those themes, that imagery, it kind of resurfaces.
Oh, I'm intrigued now. Got to
Yeah.
keep an eye out for that.
Definitely will. Shall we start with a poem that really grabbed both of us?
Let's do it. Balbadak Gyeonjin.
Or in English, Foot Soul Scripture. What a title.
It's so good. And the poem itself, it's surprisingly relatable, that feeling of being self-conscious about how we look.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. So it's about this woman on the subway, and she sees another woman with these perfect pedicured feet.
And she starts comparing, of course.
Yeah, and feeling insecure about her own because they're all rough and calloused. So human. Right. But then Shion throws in that phrase, fit soul scripture.
And that's where it gets really interesting.
It elevates the whole thing.
It does. Suddenly,
Right.
it's not just about pretty feet. It's like, what stories do our feet tell?
All those journeys they've taken us on, the hardships, the joys.
It's like our feet become this record of our lives.
And that's what Shion does so well. She takes specific detail, something physical, like the soles of our feet.
And uses it to open up this whole reflection on the human experience.
Exactly. You'll see that connection between the physical and the deeper meaning a lot in her work.
Can't wait to see how that plays out. But before we go too far, let's talk Busan.
Yes, Busan. It's practically a character in a lot of these poems.
Really? How so?
She mentions specific places, Haeundae Beach, the Donghai Nambu Line train, even the dialect people speak there.
Wow, so even if you've never been,
You can almost picture it just from her words.
that's the power of good poetry, I guess. It is. And there's this line, it's from Donghai Nambu Line, that stuck with me. She says, "The train on the Donghai Nambu Line has waves for wheels."
Oh, wow. What an image.
Right, so evocative. What do you think she's getting at there?
Well, Busan's a coastal city, right? So maybe it's about how the sea is just woven into everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The train journey, it becomes one with the ocean, like that constant presence of the water influencing the people, the city.
It almost gives the city a magical feel, like it's constantly in motion.
Definitely. But alongside these vivid descriptions of Busan, we also start to see some bigger themes emerge.
Oh, like what?
Nature is huge, but not just pretty landscapes. She uses nature to reflect human emotions, experiences.
So it's not just, oh, look, a pretty flower. There's more to it.
Way more. Like in Why Not Draw a Heron? The heron's just standing there all still waiting for its prey.
Okay.
And that stillness becomes a metaphor for the speaker's feelings about their absent mother.
Ah, I see. So it's subtle but powerful.
Exactly. Or there's Dry Spell, where she compares love to a snail's journey.
A snail's journey.
Yeah. Slow, vulnerable, leaving that glistening trail.
It's such a unique way to describe love.
Right. And speaking of complex emotions, another big one is family, specifically mothers.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme here.
There is. Sometimes they're absent, sometimes they're a source of pain, sometimes strength.
So it's not all sunshine and roses.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
It's a very honest portrayal of how messy those relationships can be.
It's refreshing, honestly. Poetry doesn't always have to be romanticized.
Exactly. And it makes you think, are these feelings specific to Korean culture or...
Or something we all relate to.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
something to ponder as we keep going.
Yeah.
Now, there's another poem I wanted to touch on, Dunkai Nambu line, that one with the train and the waves.
Oh, yeah, what about it?
It really captures that energy of Busan, but also that feeling of movement, of change.
Like life itself with all its ups and downs.
Exactly. And it also touches on memory, the
Yeah.
past. The speakers on this train journey going back to a place from their childhood.
And all these memories come flooding back.
Right. It's like how our past can feel so close, but also so distant.
Especially when you're revisiting places that meant something to you.
You get it. And there's this longing, this wanting to connect with a lost part of yourself, maybe recapture a feeling.
So much packed into one train ride.
That's Cheon for you. She weaves together place, memory, emotion. It's like a tapestry.
And the train journey is the thread that connects it all.
Beautifully put. It reminds us that poetry can be a journey, not just for the poet, but for us as readers too.
You're along for the ride.
We are. And sometimes that ride takes us to some pretty unexpected places.
Oh, I know what you mean. There are some poems in here that are, well, unconventional is one way to put it.
Like which ones?
Fireworks Dinner, for example. It's
Yeah.
literally about a dinner table where the meal is exploding fireworks.
Oh yeah, that one. Chaotic, almost violent, but also strangely beautiful.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But that's how Cheon uses metaphor, to create this feeling of disorientation, unease.
It makes you question everything.
Like, what even I as a dinner? And by extension, what is a family?
Ooh, I like that connection.
Right. It's a commentary on those pressures, those expectations within families, how they can feel explosive sometimes.
Like fireworks.
Exactly. And then there's glacier season, where a refrigerator represents a grandmother's fading presence.
That one's so clever and unexpected.
But also heartbreaking. The coldness of the fridge compared to the warmth we associate with grandmothers.
It's like the cold is slowly taking over her memories.
Such a powerful image of loss, of time passing.
It makes you think about how even the strongest memories can fade.
They do. But then you have poems like QR Code and Homo Sapiens to remember, and it's like,
Total shift in gears.
right, technology, sci-fi, futuristic elements.
He's not afraid to experiment.
Not at all. In QR Code, she actually uses those black and white squares, the visual language of the code.
To talk about communication.
Yeah, and that fragmented experience we have in the digital age.
It's like she's taking these symbols of our modern world and making poetry out of them.
It's exactly. Playful, thought-provoking, and definitely sets her apart.
She's one of a kind, that's for sure.
She is. Cheon embraces the traditional and the modern, the personal and the political.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is, but that's why her work is so captivating. You never know what you're going to get.
Each poem is a new adventure.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But I think it's time we let our listeners have their own adventure with Cheon's poetry.
Yes. Before we wrap up, is there one final poem you'd recommend to spark their curiosity?
Definitely. Old Street Tree. It's about this woman who's compared to a weathered old tree, bearing all the scars of time and experience.
Ooh, I like that.
It's a metaphor for the resilience of women, their ability to endure hardship and still flourish.
It ties back to so many things we've talked about. Womanhood, time passing, the marks life leaves on us.
It's a poem that stays with you, makes you think about the stories we all carry.
This deep dive has been amazing. Hopefully it sparks some curiosity in our listeners.
There's a whole world of meaning and beauty to discover in Cheon's poetry. Take your time with it. Savor the language.
Let yourself be moved by the power of her words.
Exactly. We'll be back soon to continue exploring. Welcome back to our deep dive into the poetry of Cheon Youngmi.
Back again. Has anything surprised you about her work so far?
One thing that really struck me is the humor.
The humor, yeah.
I wasn't expecting that going in, but it's there. Alongside these really profound reflections.
That's kind of unexpected, right? Makes it feel more real, more human.
Exactly. Humor can be such a powerful tool in poetry. It disarms you,
Yeah.
Makes you more open to the deeper stuff.
It's like a little wink from the poet, saying, hey, I'm in on the joke too.
That's a good way to put it. And Cheon does it really well, often with this touch of irony or even self-deprecation.
Like in that foot soul scripture poem, Balbadak Yongjin.
Oh yeah, what about it?
There's this line where she's worried her feet will make her crooked, just like my big toe.
I remember that one.
It's funny, but it also kind of highlights those societal pressures women face. Even down to the shape of their feet. It's crazy.
It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes.
It does. Shows how Cheon can weave these bigger social issues into these everyday moments.
It's not just personal reflection, it's social commentary too.
Exactly. Speaking of social issues, there's another poem that tackles a really sensitive topic.
Which one?
Why not draw a heron?
That one's powerful.
It is. It's about a child whose mother has left, and it explores that pain, that confusion.
And the heron, the way she uses it, it's
Ah,
brilliant.
it is. So the heron's known for being still, patient, right?
Yeah, and that becomes a representation of the absent mother.
Wow. I didn't even catch that.
It's subtle, but it's there. The child, the speaker, they're watching the heron wondering, why are you standing there so still?
And it's like they're asking their mom that too.
Exactly. Longing for her to come back.
It's heartbreaking.
It is. There's this raw honesty to the child's voice, you know?
Yeah.
Like they're trying to understand something they can't quite grasp.
And the heron, it represents that stillness, but also maybe the child's inability to move on.
You could see it that way. I also see the heron as representing resilience, that ability to withstand hardship.
Oh, I like that.
The heron's standing still, but it's enduring, just like the child's trying to do, even though their mother's gone.
It adds another layer to the poem.
It does. And it speaks to that recurring theme of family relationships.
The good, the bad, the complicated.
Right. There's longing for the mother, but also resentment sometimes.
It's not always pretty.
Definitely not. But it's honest, which is what makes Chion's work so compelling. She doesn't shy away from the difficult stuff.
And it makes you think, are these feelings unique to Korean culture or?
Or is it something universal? We
Yeah.
all experience it no matter where we're from.
Such a good question to think about as we continue.
It is. Now, there was another poem I wanted to discuss, Dongai Nambu Line.
Oh yeah, that one that really captures Busan.
It does. What
Ah.
stood out to you about it?
The way it evokes movement, change. The train journey is like a metaphor for life itself.
I see that. All the twists and turns, unexpected stops, just like life throws at us.
Right. It's not always a smooth ride.
Nope, definitely not. And the poem also touches on memory and the past.
Oh yeah, how so?
Well, the speaker is on this train, going back to a place from their childhood.
And that journey, it sparks all these memories.
Exactly. And it makes me think about how our past, it can feel so close sometimes. And yet,
So far away at the same time.
you get it. Especially when you revisit places that hold meaning for you.
It can bring up all sorts of emotions.
It can. There's this sense of longing, you know, like wanting to connect with a lost part of yourself, recapture a feeling or a moment.
It's like Cheon's managed to weave together place, memory, and emotion all into this one train journey.
She's a master at that. It's a visual representation of how intertwined those things are in our own minds.
It makes you appreciate the power of poetry, doesn't it?
It does. It reminds us that poetry can be a journey of discovery, not just for the poet, but for the reader as well.
We're along for the ride, just trying to keep up.
And sometimes that ride takes us to some pretty unexpected places.
Oh, I know what you mean. There are a few poems in here that are a bit, well, let's just say unconventional.
Unconventional, like which ones?
Fireworks Dinner comes to mind. Remember that one?
Oh yeah, that one. It's literally about a dinner table where exploding fireworks are the meal. Crazy,
Oh.
right?
It's chaotic, kind of violent even, but there's also this strange beauty to it.
That's Cheon for you. She's not afraid to push boundaries.
And that's how she uses metaphor, I think, to create this feeling of being off balance, like you're not sure what to make of it.
Like what even is a dinner? What is a family?
It makes you question everything you thought you knew.
Exactly. It's more than just the image of the fireworks. It's about the emotional turmoil that can exist within families.
The stuff that's simmering beneath the surface.
Exactly. And then you have glacier season, where the refrigerator,
The refrigerator.
it represents a grandmother's fading presence.
Oh, right, that one. I loved that one. So unexpected, but also so moving.
It is, isn't it? That contrast between the cold, sterile environment of the fridge and the warmth we usually associate with grandmothers.
It's like the cold is slowly creeping in, threatening to erase the memories.
Such a powerful image, right?
It is. It's about loss, about time passing, about how even our most precious memories can fade.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But then you get poems like QR Code and Homo Sapiens to Remember, and it's a complete shift.
Oh, I know what you mean. Bringing in technology, sci-fi.
It's like, where did that come from?
Right. It shows how willing Cheon is to experiment, to push the boundaries of what poetry can be.
And in QR Code, she actually uses those black and white squares, that visual language of the code itself.
To explore communication in the digital age, right?
Yeah. How our experiences are so fragmented now.
It's brilliant. She takes these symbols from our modern world and turns them into poetry.
It's both playful and thought-provoking at the same time.
And it definitely makes her stand out. She's not afraid to be different.
She's one of a kind, that's for sure. Blending the traditional and the modern, the personal and the political.
It's like her work is a tapestry woven from all these different threads.
It keeps you guessing, for sure. You never know what to expect next.
That's part of the fun, though, right?
It is. It's like each poem is a new adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of adventures, I think it's time we gave our listeners a chance to have their own adventure with Chian's poetry.
Yes. To dive in themselves and discover what speaks to them.
Before we wrap up, is there one final poem you'd highlight to spark their curiosity?
Oh, definitely. There's a poem called Old Street Tree.
Old Street Tree.
Yeah, it really resonated with me. It's about this woman who's compared to a weathered old tree,
I think I remember that one.
bearing all those scars, those marks from time and experience.
It's a beautiful image.
It is, and it's a metaphor for the resilience of women, their ability to endure, to grow, even after going through so much.
It ties back to so many of the themes we've been discussing, right?
Yeah.
Womanhood, the passage of time, the marks life leaves on us.
Both physically and emotionally.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About the stories we all carry, the unseen burdens, the triumphs.
It's a poem that stays with you long after you've read it.
It does. And it reminds us that beauty and meaning can be found in the most unexpected places, even in something as ordinary as an old street tree.
This deep dive has been such a joy, and I hope it's inspired our listeners to explore Chian Hangmi's poetry further.
There's so much to discover in her work, so take your time, savor the language, and most importantly,
Let yourself be moved. Welcome back, everyone. It's amazing how Chian Hangmi blends modern life with these timeless themes, isn't it?
it really is. It's like she's capturing our world right now.
Like a snapshot of how we live.
Exactly. Technology, the city, all those pressures.
Yeah.
But then she brings in these age-old human experiences.
Love, loss, searching for meaning, all that.
It's all there.
But I keep thinking about Plug Syndrome, that poem where she talks about feeling disconnected, overwhelmed.
Oh yeah, that one's really relatable.
It is. Like she wrote an anthem for anxiety in the digital age.
But even in those poems, there's still this sense of wonder, you know?
Like she's not rejecting the modeled world.
No, not at all. More like she's trying to figure out how to live in it without losing ourselves.
Right. It's not a rejection. It's more of a...
A question.
Exactly. Like, okay,
Yeah.
This is our reality, but how do we navigate it?
And she doesn't give us easy answers,
No, she makes us think.
which is what good poetry should do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of thinking, that title poem, You Need Guts to Fly, it keeps coming back to me.
Me too. What about it?
We talked about the seagulls needing courage, but I'm wondering if it's also about creativity itself.
Ooh, interesting take. Go on.
Like to be an artist, to put yourself out there, share your work, that takes guts.
It does. You're putting your heart on the line.
And Chian's poetry, it's proof of that courage. She explores those messy parts of life, the raw emotions.
And the imagery, it's so vivid, sometimes almost strange.
Right, like she's pushing us to see the world differently.
Exactly. To look beyond the surface.
And that's a great takeaway for our listeners, I think.
What do you mean?
Don't be afraid to embrace the unconventional, Question your assumptions. Look for art that challenges you.
Art that makes you think.
Yes, art that makes you feel something. And as we've seen with Chian Hangmi, beauty and meaning.
They can be found in the most unexpected places.
It's all about paying attention, being open to new perspectives.
And letting yourself be moved by the power of language.
This deep dive has been such a joy, and I really hope it's inspired you to seek out Chian Hangmi's work.
She's a remarkable poet. Her work is a reminder that poetry can be both a window and a mirror.
It shows us different worlds, but it also reflects our own experiences back to us.
And in our busy, tech-filled world, there's still a place for poetry, isn't there?
Absolutely. It connects us, challenges us, inspires us.
So keep exploring, keep diving deep into the world of poetry.
And who knows what treasures you'll uncover. Until next time, see you then.